and talk about the telecom sector. In fact, this sector has suffered the most in the last 5 to 7 years, but in the last 1 or 2 quarters, it seems like the fortunes are turning for the sector, not just for a company like Bharti, but for Idea as well, where both those companies have reported very good set of numbers this time around. Akhil Gupta, the Vice Chairman of Bharti Enterprises, joins us now to tell us whether things are really turning the corner and what is the outlook from here on. Mr. Gupta, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I want to start off with the key internal that improved this quarter, which is the India wireless business. And we've seen, a big jump in data, not just for Bharti, but for others like Idea as well. What's the sense you're getting about how much growth could come into the India wireless business? And from the overall industry growth, what kind of, a market share can Bharti enjoy?
Well, it's pretty apparent that whenever there is an upturn, the whole industry will gain, and that's why it's not specific to any individual operator. I think in the last few quarters, at least 3 or 4 quarters, we are seeing a very promising trend, and I must say that today where we stand, telecom looks more promising than it has looked in the last 3 or 4 years ever. And the reason why that is so is because, one, the realized rate on voice are increasing for everyone. Data, as you mentioned, has very strong growth, and acquisition costs are coming down. I do see these trends to continue as the competition is getting healthy and more responsible.
Okay. Mr. Gupta, we have a guest editor with us, Ramdev Agarwal, so he's going to pose some questions to you as well. Ramdev, go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, Akhil.
Good morning, Ramdev. How are you?
Very good. This is like Indian Telecom second version in last, say, 2-3 quarters. And I think if I look into the future, one of the things is that there's again a huge shift happening from wired telephone to wireless telephone, and from wireless telephone to now complete internet-based kind of telecom. Whether you call it internet only or you call it internet-based telecom. So in that situation, and then at the same time, the opportunity is just exploding. The world is going digital, and this is a very large country, and we are talking about very global opportunity for the Indians. And second is the consolidation is happening. So one side there is a massive growth ahead, and there is a natural consolidation happening. So how do you see Indian telecom shaping up in next 5-10 years? I mean, and who will be the winners? I mean, what will be required to be winning in this game?
So, if you see the history of Indian telecom ever since the private sector came in 1995, the growth story has really been wireless. And that's the same today. So to that extent, nothing has changed. The difference is that earlier wireless was a medium for carrying voice. Today it's a medium for carrying voice as well as data. Now the fundamental question, which, as you mentioned, the world is going digital. I think the basic question is that even in a country like India, where the internet penetration today is pretty low, the question is how many years would it take for every Indian or every Indian who uses telecom to be connected to internet? My guess is the arguments can be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And the only way we can connect a common Indian to internet is through wireless. And therefore, in terms of the growth prospects, I think this is one growth which is going to stay for a long time. In the foreseeable future, we do see this growth continuing and perhaps multiplying, because this always has a multiplier effect. The more you are able to supply, the more the demand. To your question as to who could be the winners, I think the winners would be the ones who would be in a position to roll out the networks very quickly, because data networks would need additional layouts vis-a-vis the voice networks. And I think anybody who can invest in spectrum and in network in timely manner would emerge as the winner.
So, Mr. Gupta, in that case, what may be the potential downsides? The manner in which spectrum is sold, could policy be too greedy perhaps to, squeeze out too much from the companies rather than squeeze from the monies they make by an exploding traffic? Could that be a downside, or could it be undercutting from your own peers? There is a big competitor in RelGeo. Could either of these become, dangerous enough for you to,
Can a disruptive competitor spoil the show?
Yes, a disruptive competitor can definitely temporarily spoil the show before it goes down the tube. But what I see in the market today is the fact that after the Supreme Court judgment, what we have now are serious competitors. And that's always a very healthy situation for an industry. You spoke of Reliance Jio. I wouldn't say that Reliance Jio I would put in the bracket of those disruptors for a very simple reason, that this is a very responsible corporate. It has committed very large capital. By their own admission in the AGM, they would have put in 60 to 70,000 crores. That's over $10 billion before they start, which is roughly 25% of their market cap. It's a very big bet. And therefore, to take that bet to disrupt everything, that doesn't make sense. So we don't expect anybody to be disruptive henceforth. And as far as Reliance Jio is concerned, we would rather welcome a competition which has always been there from people who are serious and who have long-term goals like Reliance Jio.
Okay. I think in case of Bharti, one of the thing is that what really confuses me is that it's made up of two companies. One is the Indian Bharti and other is the African venture, where actually larger capital is put in. Much bigger capital has been actually allocated from day one. I mean, probably Indian Bharti Telecom is made up of about $1 billion. Actually, you put out only $1 billion, rest all is earned and kind of deployed. Whereas in Bharti Africa, you have actually gone out and put 65, 70,000 crores of your own earned money. So, I mean, as a businessman, I would think that my heart will always be to Africa side, in the sense that what's happening to that large money. So, and then combined capital allocation. See, because companies, corporates we have seen, have suffered because of two things. One is disruptive innovation and second is bad capital allocation. Would you think, I mean, right now to us, people like us who have much shorter horizon in terms of investing than the entrepreneur himself, would you say that Africa is not a bad capital allocation? It might be a little difficult one. Or how would you see that? I mean, because at a combined level, the return on equity comes out to be single digit, even when India is doing well.
Well, first of all, let me clarify that in our mind, the capital allocation to Africa was absolutely the right decision, something that we don't repent. In fact, we believe it's such a unique asset that it's impossible to find an asset like this today. To your point that we have allocated much more to Africa and less to India is absolutely wrong. Because to my mind, as an investor, as well as an entrepreneur, or as well as a company running the businesses, it is not important what did you put it on day one. In India, sure, we have grown over a period of time. But if I was to look at India as a $1 billion investment, I'll completely ruin the shape, because I would expect returns only on $1 billion. The investment in India is manifold as compared to Africa, and that is what we concentrate on, return on capital employed. Now, as far as return on equity is concerned, Africa actually we just borrowed money. We did not put in any equity by raising any equity, and therefore the moment Africa turns profitable, which hopefully we have done the heavy lifting in the last 3 years, and I would expect that to start turning around. The moment it turns profitable, it starts adding massively to the return on equity. So in nutshell, I think Africa was a great decision. We are not disappointed. Yes, it has taken perhaps a little longer than what anybody would have expected. But I think it should be all right over a period of time.
Mr. Gupta, I think I know where Ramdev is coming from, because for somebody who tracks the sector and tracks the stock for the last many quarters, it's been a slow and steady grind to the bottom for Africa. You know, if you look at the margins just in this quarter itself, I mean, they've, I think, been the lowest in the last 14 quarters at 24-25% for the Africa business. So in terms of a timeline, do you have any timeline on when the Africa business can see a recovery? Because even the EBITDA has been sort of in that 270 to 300 million bracket for the last many quarters now.
Yes, I think it's about time that Africa has started turning, and I personally believe, of course, unfortunately we don't give any specific guidance, but I definitely believe that this year things should start showing a positive trend. And I think by the last quarter of this year, we should see very clear signs of Africa going onto the right track.
Ramdev?
Yeah, so Akhil, just a last question on Africa, and then probably a question on Infratel, which is, I think, looking to be a Bharti 01 in Infratel. That looks to be the highest kind of incremental growth in terms of earnings and dividends particularly. So I think one of the disappointment which I have always told you about the dividend coming from Bharti itself. Now since cash flow has improved, your free cash flow is now robust despite African challenge. Would you see that dividends flowing to the minority shareholders would be significant in the years to come?
Well, you know, the dividend must always be a function of how much excess cash a company has. Now, as you know, at Bharti Airtel, we do have, debts. We have a leverage which we are comfortable with, but surely it would be prudent perhaps to bring it down a little more over the next 1 or 2 years. But as you see, we have been stepping up the dividend both at Airtel and at Infratel, so that journey should continue. But I would say big dividends which you expect from Airtel should come once the leveraging is at a very, very comfortable level.
On Infratel, you have...
Yeah, so Infratel has been a fantastic earnings growing story, yet the return on equity has been not that high, and hence you have adopted not to deploy, not to hold back the profits and pay out a massive amount of money. The dividend policy at Infratel and Bharti has been very contrasting. But coming back to Infratel's business, in this digitally intensified kind of era, do you see many towers needed in the new technology kind of sphere when the Geo and all those guys they come in? Do you see the occupancy ratio going up big time?
Well, very clearly data rollouts would require many, many more towers, especially for a player like Geo, who will have to take new tenancies wherever they go. So we do expect that over a period of time, data rollouts will contribute to a faster growth in the sharing factor. No question about that. And in this business, as that goes up, the cash flows do increase. But as you see, we already have a very robust dividend policy. We have been trying to find out ways to return some excess cash. There are some company law clarifications which we are requiring. And I guess the moment we are able to do that or deploy this cash for some acquisitions, which, as you can imagine, I am being very prudent that merely because we have cash, we must not do some silly acquisitions at silly valuations. But the moment we can correct that, I think the return on equity should improve. The return on capital employed, as you can see, is much higher in case of Infratel than return on equity, which only shows it's a matter of time that the return on equity will jump up quite nicely.
Okay. I have probably what is a fringe question. Ramdev is touching it all, the soul of the questions and the issues. But the fringe question, Mr. Gupta, are you interested in the payments bank? Will it boost your current mainline business? Will it be a business in itself very lucrative? How do you look at it? I'm sure you're throwing your hat in the ring.
Well, I don't personally think it will be a business in itself because we have no intention at this point of getting into banking per se. But yes, the payment bank, from whatever I have read, should be helpful to our business in terms of Airtel Money and so on. But unfortunately, I haven't gone very deeply into it as yet. But I can confirm we have no intention of competing with the banks in the banking sector.
Okay. Then one final question before we let you go, sir. If you could just give us an indication of the growth trajectory from here on, specifically for, the RPM growth. How much headroom do the incumbents have at this juncture to increase our RPMs further before negative elasticity kicks in?
I think negative elasticity really would not be kicking in because firstly, what is never intended is a steep hike at any point of time. Number two, I do believe that there are still in the market many irrational promotions and discounts which need to be taken off over a period of time. So I do expect that over a period of time, gradually, the realized rate per minute would go up in a manner that it doesn't bring in negative elasticity. And I also believe that there is a big scope for this to continue, and there may not be any need in the foreseeable future for any hike in the headline rates for telecom.
All right, Mr. Gupta, it's been a pleasure listening to you and having you answer even Radhiv's questions. Thank you very much.
Again, thanks very much.